the way that my agency is set up is, when a request from a client comes in, it go like we're usually getting them done same day, especially if it's an easy request. We got to be able to do the easy things fast because those are obviously the things that the client's asking for. So let's get those done quickly. And I found with a lot of agencies, especially larger ones, even, it's like the old broken windows problem. Eventually you get so large that it's hard to even solve just the tiniest of issues.
Hi, everyone. This is Joshua Hoffman and Alex Gerashenko, and welcome to another episode of the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast, where we deconstruct the why and how agency owners found their success, and in season 4, focus on how we can give and receive referrals. Today, I have Doug Bradley, the owner of Everest Legal Marketing, a marketing firm that works with attorneys and law firms to help maximize exposure on search engines. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you for having me on, Josh. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks,
Of
Alex.
course, and obviously, I think before I even get into all my questions, and we were talking about this right before we started recording, but got to compliment the shirt for anyone that's watching on video.
Thank you.
I think you have fully convinced me to start wearing fun shirts on this show. So
Good.
I'll do that next time or something.
Good things happen.
So I want to go back to your early days because when we spoke before, you shared a few stories about your childhood and how that's kind of shaped who you are today. So
Yeah.
can you share a little bit more about how you grew up?
Yeah. So I'm a lifelong resident of Southern California, and for me, we grew up in kind of what I thought at the time was middle class, but looking back on it, it was definitely lower middle class. So I think that kind of shaped how I thought about money and opportunities, and I was always looking for kind of an opportunity to make money, even at a young age, because we never really had much disposable income. So if I wanted something, it was going to be figuring out a way to earn it.
Is there like a tangible decision, I guess is what I would ask, of something that that you do now because of that?
Um, so I guess I could say earning my first dollar on my own, it has carried with me as an experience, um, a very, very galvanizing moment when I first started to make money. And it was kind of weird. I was probably 12 or 13, and I was talking with my older brother, and at the time he was 23, I was about 13, or somewhere around that age range. And he said, what you could do is get a stencil kit and get a spray paint can and go around the neighborhood and go around the blocks and ask people to re-stencil the address on their curbs, because a lot of them are just kind of corroded and you could barely see them. And so we kind of did the math on it. How much is it going to cost for a stencil kit? How much is it going to cost for spray paint? And I went and bought the supplies at Home Depot, and I did that for at least a few months, just making side money. And carrying that forward, when I first started my agency, I've mentioned this before on other podcasts, but the moment I sold my first advertising under my own agency, having no, it's my own brand, I actually started crying, because it was like this whole emotional journey of creating something of value that someone wanted to buy.
Alex and I are both entrepreneurs. We both started companies, and we both know that feeling of it. There's nothing like the first sale.
Yeah.
It kind of blows your mind of I can't believe, especially if it was your concept or something from the beginning, that I
Yeah.
can't believe something from my brain got put onto paper, got executed, and then someone gave me $1 for it.
Right.
It's
Right.
a
Yeah. Now I
very,
can
very cool
support my
feeling.
family based off of that. It's a crazy concept.
It is. It is. I'm fully with you. Um, and actually, the other comment I just want to make is I think that's such a great idea because, everyone's got their lemonade stories or mowing the lawns or whatever it is. And not to say there's anything wrong with that. I think they're making money as long as, you don't have, you don't
Sure.
have
Sure.
competition. But I think what you did, I don't know, it's almost like more purple cow for a kid to do. And by that, I mean, when you get a kid that says, oh, can I mow your lawn or can I shovel your driveway? I've heard that before. Sure, it's kind of cool, but But when a kid comes up to you and they're like, they have this different offering that like totally makes sense too. I don't know. I just think I thought that was a great
Yeah, yeah, not and trust me, I've pulled my fair share of weeds.
idea.
I've done that. I've sold lemonade. I've mowed lawns. I mean, anything that I could think of. But that was kind of the one that I thought was, again, was kind of the thing that people hadn't heard of, and they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, it does kind of look kind of cruddy out there on the curb," and
I just
worked out.
I think it's such a good idea. We talked about that before. I love that. Fast forwarding a little bit, I want to discuss how and why you started your agency because I think you have a path that others can kind of borrow from. So can you talk about the agency you worked for before starting Everest, the acquisition, and kind of
Yeah.
what followed?
Yeah, so I worked for a large legal advertising firm that owned a pretty good portfolio of legal directories. And I was hired on to kind of turn around a failing territory here in Southern California. And just from the moment I started training into that position and working with the clientele of lawyers and marketing, to a lawyer's potential client, I really just got kind of enamored and fascinated with how this business cycle works. And I started learning about it as much as I could. And one of the things that I had identified fairly early on was that I would sell these websites and SEO programs to firms and several $1,000s a month in many scenarios. And what I found was that the firm wasn't executing very well. And what would happen if anybody's ever done advertising sales, if the advertising isn't working well, you generally have, and that client doesn't pay, you're going to get a chargeback on your commission. And so, really, just as a matter of self-preservation, I started to teach myself search engine optimization way back, 10 plus years ago. And I really had to get pretty decent at it in order to make these sales stick. Otherwise, my commission would be on the line and I'd have to have a chargeback. So that's really what I started doing was learning it, learning it, learning it. And then about 3 years into the job, they sold the company to a large advertising conglomerate who basically just enveloped them under their brand. And me and about 200 other people were out on our ass, having this knowledge of how to, sell advertising to lawyers and make it work. And so at that moment in time, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit just kind of came back. And I said, well, I've got clients who know me and trust me. Maybe I could take a couple of those and work on starting my own agency. And that's exactly what I did.
And I think you might have answered this, but I'm going to ask it again just in case I can squeeze the grape and get a little bit more out of this. But what gap, I guess, did you find in the market that led you to like even think that you could start an agency? And then if you already answered that, why law firms?
Well, I know for sure with working with law firms and their pain point often, especially with website vendors, SEO vendors, is they don't get fast enough response, or there's a big lag in time that it takes from a request to an executed solution. And the way that my agency is set up is, when a request from a client comes in, it go like we're usually getting them done same day, especially if it's an easy request. We got to be able to do the easy things fast because those are obviously the things that the client's asking for. So let's get those done quickly. And I found with a lot of agencies, especially larger ones, even, it's like the old broken windows problem. Eventually you get so large that it's hard to even solve just the tiniest of issues. And so we've really done well, I think, in that regard. That is definitely a gap. And then the other one is just SEO agencies just not paying attention to what drives a law firm. Law firms are just very different business models than a typical service industry type of model, like air conditioning contractors or plumbers or any other type of vendor. And it's a different approach, it's a different pitch, it's a different interest creating remark, it's a different value proposition. It's very different, and it has to be kind of molded to that clientele.
No, I think that makes sense, and I do want to get back to kind of the specialization that you go. But before that, just a few more other kind of notes that I have. You shared with us last time that you take a slightly different approach towards business, and you decided to actually become friendly with competitive
Yeah,
agencies.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What the hell's the logic there?
Yeah. So I guess it's a you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And a lot of my competitors, I've developed good friendships with them, and we occasionally text each other, "How are you doing? What's going on?" And the reason is I've found that sometimes there's conflicts that prevent a vendor from taking on a client in a certain area or a certain type of practice, and they may ask me if it's something that I can do and then refer it to me, and vice versa. And that has worked out for me kind of more times than I could count. And it's worked out for other, by the way, it's worked out for other firms too, because we're able to trust each other enough to send a competitor a really valid lead. Up until recently, that's recently it bit me in the ass.
Hmm. Okay. What happened?
Please share.
So I took on a client, and a really excellent client. The prior vendor had done a good job with their website, with their content. They did a redesign of the website, pretty extensive. And I told the client even, look, this is not a website I have to redesign. Many clients, I have to meet them where they're at. So some of them have a terrible website, terrible content, terrible SEO, and we have to just kind of blow it up and start over. Well, this client didn't really have many of that problem. He had a pretty decent website. The vendor took care of him, but it just wasn't being executed really well. But the client wanted the prior vendor to stay involved to the degree that he was still going to host it, and he was still going to be doing some website editing that he wanted to finish up. That was part of his prior deliverable, and he wanted to stay engaged in that regard. And so, we've gone on a couple of months, and then the client forwards me this long list of laundry bullet points that vendor says that I'm doing improperly, and that I'm purposely trying to tank the website. And that's the first time it's really, really bitten me to take, kind of less than a cordial approach to a competitor.
I appreciate you sharing that story, and the first part, I think, like, unlike other industries, the agency world, especially the marketing agency world, can be friendly with each other, even if you're
Sure.
directly competing, because
Yeah.
there, like, truly is enough business to go around.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you nailed the more important part, which is the referral part. Whether I don't have enough resources right now to even take on the project that I normally
Bingo.
would, or I don't do these services or whatever it is. But like you said, I think a good vetting process, and sometimes you just, even if you vet them and they turn out to be okay, you run into these situations that you could have never figured out before. But just to highlight kind of what we're trying to do with this podcast, that's why we're turning this podcast into not just can we get listeners and things like that and sponsors and everything, but can we actually benefit our guests and start this referral network, where, if you want to opt in, I don't think we've talked about it this far, but
I'm in. I'm
if you,
opting in. Here's me
perfect.
officially
Like, do you want to
opting
just,
in.
we send an email out once a month, we say, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you have any projects upcoming? If no one, if you don't even want to respond, that's totally fine. And we're just waiting for those, not waiting. We get those, 2 or 3 a month that says, hey, yeah, actually, I need to help with SEO. I have a lawyer, a legal client, and this is nothing I've done before. Do you know anyone in the legal space? Development
Yeah.
work is probably the thing that goes around the most, where, I do SEO, I do photography, I do video, whatever it is. But I didn't want to hire someone from another country, from US, whatever it is, because I didn't want to manage that. Do you know anyone that can help me? And I think that's been this big shift in for us. Directly what you're saying is not just, can we share the referrals that are already in our network? But did you vet them a little bit before, whether it's
Yeah.
not just the podcast, but previous work and things like that. So I kind of took what you said and not only put my own thoughts and obviously shared a little bit more about the podcast, but I just think yeah.
I want to dive into that, Doug, because I think it'll be helpful for our listeners and definitely for Josh and myself as we're building this network. The agency that was continuing to provide web services,
Yeah.
is that an agency that you were previously in contact with, or you just decided to keep them on by request of the client or something like that?
Yeah. So prior to the relationship with the client, I knew about this agency. Not necessarily by reputation, but I had bumped into their work a couple of times. So I was familiar with them. They'd been doing it for a long time. So, from an outsider looking in, it looked like a very legitimate agency, and it is a very legitimate agency. And they do good work. And so I'm not trying to throw them under the bus at all. but I definitely think there was probably some better due diligence that I could have done rather than just kind of wrapping my arms around and saying, "Oh, I got a new friend here."
Hmm.
Well, that begs the question, well, what would you have done differently?
Hmm.
I think I would have gone into a lot more detail as to what their role was going to be, what they're doing, what
Yeah.
the expectations of them are, who is accountable to who's reporting to who. Um, he did list kind of some of the things they wanted to take care of and some of the things they wanted to do, and none of it seemed like it was going to be really interfering with what we were doing on our side. So it didn't seem like it was going to be this adversarial, but now it's turned
Hmm.
into kind of like a scorned past lover situation. And I found myself now it's drained time and energy from my business, where I had to now go on the defensive and kind of prepare a rebuttal and meet with the client and stakeholders in the relationship. And it was a time suck, and I had to kind of pour over it over a handful of days. So it was really a pain in the butt. And um, the clients moving forward, we're moving forward without that vendor. And unfortunately, that vendor could have been the beneficiary of some referrals, and maybe I could have benefited from their referrals to me,
Mhm.
but I don't think that's going to happen now.
Is there a something that you could have established with the vendor or the client? I mean, you were talking about breaking down like responsibilities. I think a lot of the issues comes down to specific communication to say, I don't know, whether it's for these type of problems, this is how we're going to do it in the arrangement between the two agencies. What do you think could have been done differently there to potentially prevent it from happening? And do you think that company, that other agency or vendor would have went along with those type of requests? Or
Yeah. So I think to answer the first part of the question, I think we could have mapped out some things a bit better and maybe communicated what we're going to be doing and focusing on a bit better. And maybe that would have potentially put his mind at ease as to what we were doing and what we're focusing on. But quite frankly, I don't think that that was his intent when trying to stay aboard with the project. You know, I think he was just looking for a way to get back in with the client, regardless of what had
Mm.
been done or what had not been done, or successes or perceived, slights against the client. So
Mhm.
I think his motive was flawed, or not in my favor from the beginning. So I think that it probably would have failed no matter what.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing would maybe be have been little bit more collaborative with the client. That here's what we're doing, here's what they're doing, here's what our expectation and deliverables are, here's what theirs are. In that scenario, maybe that could have worked out a bit better. But I still think that his intent was not to really do that. I think his intent
Mm.
was to try and see the first opportunity to strike, and that's what he did. He
I
took he
see.
took that opportunity.
And what was that agency's name? No, I'm just
I'm not that jaded.
yeah, that's right. Yet.
But if he emails me again, he's not going to get a very nice email back.
I think it's fair. So now I'd like to learn a little bit more about the firm, Everest Legal Marketing, because part of our goal, like we've been saying on this podcast, is to build referrals among our guests that promotes, collaboration and support. I don't think we could have transitioned into something any better than the conversation we just had. But more specifically, I want to start with specialization. That's the second time I've screwed that word up. Because we see marketing agencies kind of always trying to expand and sometimes become, and usually they become too thin, whether that's their services, industry, whatever it is. So why did you decide to stick with the legal space and the services that you provide and not just try to expand once you got that check mark?
Yeah, so it's kind of a culmination of things. First off, I really wanted to specialize because I had a knowledge of lawyer marketing from my experience with that legal marketing agency. And prior to that agency, I worked for, way back in the days, we used to sell yellow page ads. So I had experience in that. And all of these things are very directional marketing. It's marketing to people who have a demand and they have a need, and the need is known, but they don't know a who. And so they go on this client journey to find that who. And legal marketing lends itself really well to that construct because most people have never hired a lawyer And if so, they may have done it once in their life. So they have a need. They know I have a need. I need a lawyer. I don't know a lawyer. I might ask friends and family, but maybe I don't want to expose this issue to my friends and family. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to go to the thing that will help me find a lawyer, which is a search engine. And to me, specialization really helped me narrow down my focus and really helped me say, this is what I'm good at. This is what I can do. This is what I'm capable of. And then I could present that to any firm or marketing manager at a firm and say, here's the value that we bring to the table. We only work with law firms. We know what you need. We know what you want. And more importantly, we know what you don't want. It's really important to know what client doesn't want. Thinking, going into a relationship thinking they might want all of these leads for this thing. And then they tell you months later, by the way, we don't do that at all. We don't want any of this. So we already have a pretty good knowledge of what clients want just because we only work with law firms.
Do you think you would expand
No,
outside of that? No. Okay.
100% no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And not because I don't think that there would be a business opportunity to do it. I think the revenue would be there, but we really like working with lawyers just because of that level of specialization. We know what they're looking for. We know what they want. We know their network. We know how their referral network works with other attorneys. Sometimes we facilitate that. Actually, this last week, my project manager and we introduced two attorneys to each other who didn't know each other. One does family law, one does estate planning. Neither the two shall ever do that practice area on their own, but they're in the same geography and they work with families who are in distress. And it was a natural fit to introduce them. There was nothing in it for us outside. We're going to have a nice lunch with two clients. They may be able to refer some real good clients back and forth to each other and just solidify our relationship.
I was going to say, did you get some we get 5% top line or something? No.
I told them I'm billing them back for the lunch, though.
That's fair. That's fair. And then we talked about how you got started, having existing relationships from the previous jobs and the industry and everything. But where do you get most of your business now?
That's a good question. It's a bit of a mix of people finding us online and referrals. We actually do get a fair amount of referrals, both from clients and from other agencies, just because we've been able to send clients to other agencies. When they get something that they either can't work with, they send it to us. Also, quite frankly, having done a handful of podcasts and having other agencies and or our target clients see the podcasts, we've got a couple of clients that way as well. So I think it's a mix of doing these types of marketing things where we got to have a good website, good testimonials, good data to show that we know what we're doing, good actual presentable deliverables that we've done for clients, so all that culmination of things really makes for a good incoming client experience. They know they're hiring the right firm.
And I guess similar-ish question on the same page of how things have changed since you started. What does your team look like now? Whether it's full-time, part-time, contractors, partnerships. What does your team look like now?
When I first started, I knew that we were going to be a lean machine, and so I'm still very involved, extremely involved in all of the SEO strategy for all of our clients, 100% of our clients. We're constantly looking at that strategy for our clients. I'm constantly looking at ranking and traffic reports for every single one of my clients. I can say that without reservation. However, we have a technical employee here in the US who helps with kind of, I would say, like grade 1 problems. Like we need a problem solved like right now for this client. We need to get this taken care of. We also have a project manager here in the US who helps coordinate all of the content with our writers. We work with 7 legal writers, almost all of them who are JDs who write in their spare time for our clients. And that's, if you do the math, that's hundreds of pieces of content every month that we're producing custom for our clients. We're not using ChatGPT or generative language models. We're not using that. We're actually paying writers for their work. And so that is a big portion that needed to be set to someone to pay special attention to just content, from writer assignment to revisions, to client approval, to publishing. That turned into a job of its own. And then we have 3 virtual assistants in the Philippines that we work with for several years.
Appreciate you sharing that. And if we had more time, I would dive into the ChatGPT thing, but maybe that'll be for another show.
It's a beast of a conversation, but I do have a lead that is incoming because their current vendor is using ChatGPT for all of their content.
Oh, you're like, I want to go in so far. I know if we enter that conversation, it'll be like another 30 minutes. But I think I have to get to these last questions. So again, this whole referral network that we're trying to start with our guests, like I mentioned, the next few questions are really to just understand like your business at the highest level, or the information that needs to be known,
Sure.
so that we can share them with obviously with other guests if there's any referral, or obviously if anyone reaches out to us and says like, hey, I need your services. Do you know anyone? So the first question is just kind of, can you give a synopsis of what services you provide?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, we do website designs, and we're always looking for really talented website designers and website design agencies who just want to design websites white label for us. So we're always looking for that. We're looking for really good website designers. Um, so we do the design, and we use a variety of vendors for the client for that. We do all of the content, both the strategy and the writing of the content. That's our writing team who does the actual execution. And then we do the active engaged search engine optimization. Authority building for our clients, making sure that any technical problems are being addressed. We did have a couple of clients who got hit with the helpful content update, and we had to reconfigure and change that around. We have to adapt to those things. We recently completely updated our writing style for our clients. And so we have to manage these things in real time, and that's what we do for our clients, because our clientele, lawyers, want nothing to do with that crap. They want to hire an agency and say, fix this, do this. I don't want to worry about it. I'll pay you for it. Just give me the reports on what's going on, and we'll get better over time. And that's what we do.
I think you might have just answered my next question. But again, I will ask it, especially because we actually separate this question out and we put it in the beginning of the episode. So previous guests or anyone can actually go in and say like, hey, let me see if I can use this. Or if I can either refer or get referrals from this. So how can you work with other marketing agencies, or what services can you partner with other agencies? So in other words, what do agencies tend to reach out to you for?
Typically, it's I would say website design is one of them. We're a bit picky. We do like to look at other website designers. We get hit up constantly for legal writing. I'm very picky about the legal writers that we work with. I'm usually looking for a JD who's in the United States, who has either experience practicing or is currently practicing. That's usually who we're looking for to write for our clients. So the only thing I don't think we're going to outsource to any other real agency is the functional search engine optimization, the authority building, the strategy, content marketing, things of that sort. I think we're going to hold tight to that because that's our core service offering, and to outsource that seems disingenuous to the value we bring to the table.
You keep beating me to my next question, which is the goal, or it's like the hope of a guest. But I still,
I'm very forward thinking.
But and then I'll ask the question again because we want to separate these and really make it easy for people to see if they can use your help. What do you usually outsource to other marketing agencies?
Yeah, I mean, I would say specifically website design. Website design is a very good skill that we don't have in-house. We would rather hire design firms who do really excellent work. And hopefully those design firms will have experience working with law firms because they'll already know kind of the structure of a law firm website. So that's most of who we're bringing in for clients. The writers, all of our writers are contractors for us. So we learned early on in our agency not to have one writer to write for all of our clients. Not because it's just too much work. That's part of it. But the other thing is we've had to let writers go for plagiarism and for other issues. And we didn't want to have one writer holding all the keys to the kingdom for all of our projects. So we've kind of made it modular in the fact that each of our writers has a clientele assignment. And if that writer needs to go for any reason, whatever the reason may be, they're not working with us anymore, we have to reassign 4 or 5 clients, not 40.
I think that was a really important lesson. I'm glad you shared that. And as we come up to the end of the episode, I just want to give you an opportunity to mention how people can find you and anything else you'd like to end with.
Website, everestlegalmarketing.com. I'm mostly active on Twitter, but it's kind of hit and miss. When I'm busy, I'm not active. But usually I like to share things that are going on in the legal marketing agency or search engine optimization industry. So that's really where you'll find me.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those of you who have learned something new from this episode, please consider giving us a like or a follow so we can continue getting the highest quality guests. And as always, thank you for listening. Doug, I think we nailed everything on this. We dove into referrals and everything. And sometimes we'll get into it at the end. And I feel like this entire episode was just great for talking about what we're supposed to be talking about anyway. So really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being so open about it. That was great.
Yeah, I love anytime if somebody wants to contact me, I'll talk more about it.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Thanks for listening to the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I just want to thank our sponsors, DevNoodle. DevNoodle provides marketing agencies with the ability to offer their clients unlimited website design, build, and management services with fixed monthly plans. If website design, development, and maintenance is holding your agency back from growing, please reach out to us at devnoodle.com, where we make websites easy for you and easy for your clients. devnoodle.com.